welcome back to another edition of Detonation. I have here Ben Zion, our growing normal. He's a Transhumanist Party candidate, and he's always on the show, and we love to have him back all the time. And we have Eray Ozkural. Eray Ozkural, he's from Turkey. He's joining us 3 a.m. in Turkey. Thank you so much for joining us on the show today. Mr. Eray Ozkural, can you please introduce yourself and tell us your background and all the exciting things that you do?
All right. My name is Dr. Eray Ozkural. I've obtained my PhD in computer science, and I've worked first on parallel data mining, and then I designed a number of algorithms for general purpose machine learning. So I tackled problems like transfer learning, which is essential for machines to increase their intelligence to human level, because obviously humans need cumulative learning. We have to pile knowledge on top of previous knowledge so that we can acquire sophisticated skills. So that's a key problem in AGI, and I introduced some solutions to that very early on, and I also showed things like one-shot learning. That's obtained in a general purpose machine learning experiment. So those were some practical solutions to long-standing problems, and then I moved on to theoretical analysis, and I introduced a physical reformulation of algorithmic information theory, which is the mathematical foundation of the theory of inductive inference or machine learning. So I'm quite involved in both the foundational theoretical research and new algorithms, and we're coming to a point where we're witnessing what I like to call technological convergence. We're seeing dramatic improvements in computer technology, and simultaneously we have much more capable, much more effective algorithms and efficient ones too. So this massive progress on both fronts are converging to a human level capability. And my earliest predictions for that were 2023 for GPU technology, and using just CPUs. We will get there, the required efficiency to match the energy efficiency of the human brain by around 2030. And so far, we've been on track, and the energy efficiency is improving steadily. And so we're following Kumi's law instead of Moore's law now. Maybe we can't put that many transistors every year, but we can improve the energy efficiency of the underlying technology, and that's just as important, because, as you know, the human brain operates on something like 20 watts of power. That's like a light bulb, right? And it does amazing petaflop scale computations with that. So we inhabit exciting times indeed.
Can you explain, and Ben, we'll bring you in on this conversation in a second, just to frame the audience. We're talking about AI. So can you explain, you said we're going on to a new law, Kumi's law or something, and not Moore's law. We talk about on this show, Ben Zion and I actually talked about this, that Moore's law was probably reached its end of its days. Can you explain this idea? It's a very exciting idea.
Right. Moore's law was, the Intel founder Moore's observation that every year we, for the same price, for a fixed price, we can put twice as many transistors on a chip, right? So the cost to place transistors on a microchip got cheaper exponentially. And this was Moore's law, and it meant something like, every 18 months, you double the cost effectiveness of chip technology. But this tapered off after a while. That actually started in 2010 or so. Or we should be having much faster chips. With apparently the chip technology is it's kind of a brick wall, right? So they aren't getting much faster nowadays, if you notice. So the key to maintaining Moore's law was running at an increased clock rate, right? So we can't push those clocks so rapidly nowadays because of we're hitting the physical limits of the physical layer technology, the silicon transistor technology, right? So either we'll have to move to a new substrate, new physical medium, or make some other kind of radical discovery that will allow us to process at much faster speeds. But this is not happening very soon, and instead we're trying to decrease the energy required to do the same computation. So we're building chips that are better for mobile, especially because your battery is always limited. So that's very important in mobile, but also in supercomputing, because energy becomes a limiting factor in running a data center, right? So for fixed costs, if you can do twice as many computations, then that's an important kind of efficiency. And so that's Kumi's law. And we've been close up approximating a trend that's very similar to Moore's law, and it actually fits the evolution of GPU technology fairly closely. So that I think GPU technology is especially, pulling the thread for Kumi's law, and this is happening right now, and it seems to be, able to, it can go on rather effectively without disturbance up until 2030s. Rather easily, it will happen. But by then, we'll also have perfected some alternative computing technologies. So I think we're going to see the emergence of optical quantum computers, because there have been some recent inventions in that area that seem to show that we're getting at this miniaturized, optical computer, and obviously that can work very fast because it uses light instead of electricity. So, and we've had these optoelectronic systems, but I think we're getting close to this complete photonic computer architecture. So that's one of the directions. And obviously we have quantum computing architectures like D-Wave, and there are many projects at Cambridge, etc., that are progressing towards a solid-state quantum computing architecture. So that can also change things, and we can go back to Moore's law again.
Interesting. So Ben Zion, so we'll bring you in on this debate. So you're a candidate running in the Transhumanist Party and USA, and you have policies on AI. Would you like to talk on AI, maybe on the futurist New Deal policies concerning AI?
Yes. Well, the Futurist New Deal is primarily a reform ticket, and it's oriented towards setting the stage for a civil society that can sustain life extension. And there's a few ways of doing that by promoting more transparency in government and e-governance, and also by economic reforms that will allow us to be doing the basic work that we would need to then have a populace that can survive to life extension. These are things that are near and dear to my heart. But the e-governance aspect, I spoke with the gentleman, Florian Marcus, an emissary from the Estonian government, who's an e-governance expert. And, we were talking about all the ways in which their society is making these great inroads to more digitalization and automation. And that really does allow for researchers to be making greater contributions, to be tying their work to more closely to the direction of the civil society. And we have a sense, there's a very real sense, Ira, you probably can remember AI Winters, and you probably this is very much a feature, to some degree, of a lack of political will and a lack of funding in these areas, and also just the whims of the public more generally. And so anything that we can do to elevate that conversation towards, because this is a talk about AI safety, and I like Eray, I disregard the idea that we have to concern ourselves overly with AI safety. The idea that a great number of man hours in the form of advanced algorithms being added to the workplace is somehow a danger. This is a science fiction notion. This is people having some kind of metaphysical ideas about something, not really analyzing what that would be in practice. That additional work product and so forth that this describes. Just a few years ago, a guy who is in some ways a great proponent of advanced algorithms, Elon Musk, referred to this kind of work as summoning the demon. He's also tended to set the stage for a kind of arms race therein, wherein the enhanced humans are trying to steer this mighty ship of superintelligence with the neural lace. And I definitely support some of these stratagems, but I think you and I are probably on the same side of that. You're right with.
Let me contribute some ideas to that angle. Tech scare, has been a constant part of technology news, and we've had so many tech scares like Y2K bug, right? And and we had the nanotech gray goo, right? And even virtual reality was such a threat. There was the lone mower man, and then we had the Terminator and Matrix movies, and everybody went nuts about this AI thing is definitely going to kill us. So that's been kind of part of the pop culture psyche for quite some time, right? So by default, we think if we give life to a machine, it will probably realize that we're really dangerous and harmful apes and try to get rid of us. Okay, so that might happen, but it's not a very, very high probability, and therein lies the problem with dumbing down technology and producing tech scare for free publicity, which seems to be the strategy of Elon Musk, because he got so much free PR with that, and so he got so much free press time, and he could push his companies to the forefront of attention, and actually help his AI related companies get funding, because now he looks like one of the experts in a very important public debate, right? But the reality is not that clear cut, because most of the should we say alarmists, or I don't know, like the exaggerated statements from the AI safety community. The most radical statements, like AI is an existential risk for humanity, are not very scientific ideas. They are more like science fiction conceptions of the AI technology, like where you give this machine consciousness, and suddenly becomes very dangerous, because you can't predict what it's going to do, or you have programmed it in such a way that it has no choice but to act maliciously. So there are, of course, a lot of tacit assumptions behind such comic book like science fiction scenarios.
It reminds me of the very genesis of all these sort of horror stories, which is Frankenstein, which was a biological AI, and it's sort of been an outgrowth from that scare. But there has been a whole, like you mentioned, there has been a whole host of movies: AI, Ex Machina, Transcendent Man, Blade Runner. I mean, there's a whole swath of Hollywood fear mongering which goes along with this. But what about this idea, Mr. Ozkural, of compounding learning? So after we get out of narrow AI and you go into a more general AI, which is what your field, and it compounds and it learns on that exponential curve. Is that not a worry? Because intelligence and wisdom are completely different. And if you program it to say, there's the old one, end world hunger. Well, if you destroy all the humans, you've ended world hunger. You know, so what about this idea?
Right. So it's probably not a good idea to program an AI system like that. You probably need to introduce a lot of constraints if you want to formulate it as an optimization problem, because it might violate some common sense conditions that we take for granted. Now, actually, it's not a good idea to get an autonomous AI involved in human affairs at all until we really understand what they're doing, right? Then maybe we want to upload some of our social responsibilities, right, like human to human interaction or decision making, onto machines. But that is a de facto bad idea, right? Like it's a terrible idea. First you have to give them tasks that are really good at, test them, and then if someday we see that they actually kind of understand common sense, the human daily life, and then we get them involved in our matters. So most of those are simply implausible application scenarios in most of the applications, like vast majority of the applications, 99.8% or so. You don't need autonomy at all. You don't need an autonomous agent in the first place. And it's in the very, very rare cases where you do need autonomy. So that's like, a great example is, say, Mars exploration, where autonomy would make a ton of difference, or say search and rescue, or putting out a fire, right? So these are where you need autonomy. But even then, in most of these tasks, so highly specialized that you don't need to really interact with humans much, or get into complicated ethical dilemmas involving humans. It simply won't be the case most of the time. So, but still, there are of course many scenarios that are realistic. Consider the recent debacles of Facebook concerning privacy, right? Data privacy. So what if an AI company collects a lot of data about us, and starts knowing things about us that even we do not know? So that's that's obviously a very unwelcome capability for a company that's not owned by myself. It's like they own a good deal of my life, right?
This is a good point, because this is a really good point, because they're collecting data on all humans, and they can throw you into a statistical average, which means they would know more about you based on group behavior. Benzion, have you got we're talking about AI safety. Have you got any quantum computing ideas? Like you said, photonics is going to become a big thing. Is the Futurist New Deal or anything focused on this shift into a quantum world?
Well, there's not a lot of language or discussion in the architects of this platform around moving into these other substrates that Eray mentioned. But I do think it's good to focus on the nearest term concerns, and certainly something very much akin to social engineering deriving from just a small increases in what we have now, with the Cambridge Analytica concerns. That's going to create all kinds of manipulation of a kind. If Google and Amazon are able to host many billions of artificial personalities, which are indistinguishable from you or I, they can glut the marketplace of ideas with their own whatever their agenda might be. Certainly, rather corporatist agenda, and that's not a real good thing for us.
And then there's a matter of political manipulation. Maybe it's already happened, like you've seen these sock puppet accounts on Facebook, right? These anonymous guys pop up, whenever you're talking about someone important, like Clinton's or Trump or something like global warming, etc. some troll, like someone you don't know with a fake account appears and makes a lot of comments, apparently following a script, right? So that's manipulation. Like they're actually finding the guys that have these incorrect opinions. A program does that probably, and they're locating your comment, and then they're sending this guy to write a response, canned response, because he has a script, and they can probably automate this with AI. Imagine the consequences of that. Like everyone could be, simply overwhelmed by hundreds of sock puppet accounts, trying to convince him in like a million ways every day, subtly manipulating the guy's thoughts. So this is actually possible, and I think that's a great danger to democracy.
Yeah, because the modern battlefield is changing people's minds. It's winning minds, and one of the best tactics of propaganda is to hear a repeated message. For example, if I put the word Bitcoin in this title of this episode, we would get a whole stack of fake YouTube bots that would do the same thing. Because every time I put Bitcoin in, suddenly they all appear. So it's very real. It's not the Russians doing it, but it's very real. In terms of, sorry, what?
I don't know. And just what Eray was saying about the pace of this techno progress, it's often repeated by technologists, Ray Kurzweil and a dozen others, that there's very little distinction between the move from narrow AI to a general AI and narrow AI to superintelligence, because that level of agency and that level of complexity and versatility, in conjunction with the amount of data that's readily available and the computing speed that's already available, will that be something substantively different from human-like capacities. And so, as we're at that edge now, we're going to see manipulations of these kinds. And I'm not a big fan of all the privacy concerns that some people have. I think that we need to have a more open society. That's a point that I've made time and again in talking about the futurist New Deal. But there's a lot of things that we can't quite predict, and we have to be as mindful as we can of concerns along these lines.
Mr. Eray, Ozkural, so the military is the military working on ways to use AI and utilize AI to, say, hijack advanced weapon systems from other countries or build their own, or is a military application to AI?
Well, obviously there is, and there are a bunch of DARPA projects that look like they're quite advanced. We don't know what they're really doing, but they do publish stuff. And now we recently heard, well, this has just been declassified. You can look it up. There's I think Department of Defense program called Sentient, right? It's called it's an AI fully autonomous AI system for intelligence services, like for analyzing threats, intelligence reports. So it's going to add this automated analysis aspect to the treasure trove of data they're getting from drones, satellites, the intelligence reports, everything. If you use an AI to process all that information, you wouldn't look over things. It would be you would extract more actionable intelligence from the data. So it's actually critical for them because they're generating way too much data, right?
Yeah.
So they've actually started using this stuff, say, for analyzing the drone footage.
Is it concerning that like there is a sort of a superpower arms race in the AI world, in especially in the military sphere? Is that concerning?
Somewhat, yeah, because obviously the militaries don't follow any rules. It's They say they do, but we know they don't. So that is concerning. And initially, AI doomsayers, the people who exaggerate and any potential risk from AI, they were saying like, oh, this is a national security matter, so that's why we should just ban AI research. Of course, that's not a great solution either, because if USA bans AI research like they tried with cryptography, that wouldn't work, because the adversaries would just keep developing. They're not stupid people, right? So right now, China is making so many rapid advances in high technology, including AI, and they're actually getting more patents than their Western colleagues nowadays. So it's you can see how that's a concern. So I think we really should think about how we would prevent any kind of conflict between superpowers, because now nuclear weapons proliferation is on the table too. Both USA and Russia are developing new medium-range missile systems, and so there's actually a lot of war risk in the world, especially due to global warming. So it's conceivable that militaries would like to deploy things like drone squadrons to patrol or to respond to air threats, or to fight insurgents. And I think this, unfortunately, I think this is going to become a lot more common in the next 20 years, and we're going to see AI units deployed in the battlefield. US also has these sophisticated research programs for, say, command and control using AI. They are using AI for all sorts of things. And if you think about it, the homing missile is a kind of a simple AI, right? Or the cruise missile. So those were already autonomous systems, and military has a lot of experience building such systems. So I think it can happen very quickly once the basic technology is available.
Ben Zion, you're in America. Ethics of the superpowers getting AI. What would you do?
Yes. Well, there's a very real sense in which we see this already playing out. The concerns around Cambridge Analytica and many other organizations besides these are large. These are also international intrigues and cyber wars that are occurring at the very same time and with these very same organizations. And I think of someone like Peter Thiel, who has a similar kind of operation, which has an awful lot of implications in different related subfields. But this organization is connected to all manner of law enforcement agencies and connected in kind of a transnational way as well. And this is a guy who has spent a fair amount of money on a thing that I'm very passionate about, life extension. And yet the operations of his business, in some ways, they tend to reflect this more corporatist and these narrow nationalist interests. And it's why I think that the kind of work that Eray does is so important, because I think it can move us beyond this infighting and these around these things at the earliest stages, and onto a more onto a stage where this is very much a transnational phenomenon, and that is what artificial general intelligence means to me. That is what a more connected world means to me. So I thank you, sir, for being at the vanguard of that. And it's nice. It's nice to meet you.
As well. About that last thing you said, absolutely right. AGI technology is probably the foundational, the core technology of the 21st century. Everything else depends on it.
That was my next question. That was my next question. Have we gone beyond the point where we already need these systems to survive as a species, or are we on the cusp?
I think we're on the cusp of it, right? So, as you know, one of the pressing challenges, global challenges, is global warming mitigation, and that's, as you've probably heard, a lot of work. Say, we've lost around 3 trillion trees, so we're going to have to plant those back. A good deal of them, at least 1 trillion of them. So that's the kind of thing that could use a lot of, automation. And so robotics is going to benefit a lot from automation. It's probably more dependable than remote operation, but anyhow, robotics technology, but then also all sorts of intellectual labor fields, including design, engineering, science. These can all benefit from massive speed ups using AI technology. So imagine like you're a professor at a research institute, right? You're going to test out your new idea. Nowadays, you have these, disposable PhD students, and you give each one of them a piece of the of your project, and they do it. And if they succeeded, you go on publishing that stuff, right? So the advanced engineers or scientists need a lot of assistance, and the AI systems we're building can be the perfect assistant for this kind of technical work. So that would amplify the technical creative person's ability to create ever more wonderful designs. Like say you need 50 or 100 real skilled aerospace engineers to design a spaceship. But with this technology, one very skilled scientist could design it. It would increase our productivity so much that our technology would advance at abnormal speeds, right? So the idea of Kurzweil was that 20,000 years of technological progress would be compressed into 21st century, at the rate of 20th century progress. So that would be so many centuries of progress in 1 century, and that would of course fundamentally change things, because we have great challenges like power. We could solve a fusion power problem. We could solve interplanetary transport problem. We could solve the global warming mitigation problem. So these grand challenges and more, like longevity, are awaiting us. Well, fortunately, we didn't even need computers to make so much progress in longevity. And I think this is something that Ben is really concerned about. I don't think the general public is up to date about the present impact of longevity research. So, I suppose Ben would like to talk about that.
It's a thing where we run the risk of doing all of ourselves a disservice in terms of the best public health outcomes by not having this cultural literacy around life extension. It's a very real risk. I'm speaking to Liz Parrish of BioViva in a few minutes, and that's one of the things that we're going to talk about. She's made an awful lot of headway with her organization and one of many organizations that is setting the stage for the prospects of super longevity. But just as we have institutions today that will tend to throttle techno progress or just the marketplace constraints and other kinds of constraints that will tend to have these things fall by the wayside, it's fine if some kind of new 4K television or something doesn't come to market so quickly. But this kind of throttling in the life sciences represents a loss of life, and that's a tragic thing. So I think that it is the main function of an organization like the U.S. Transhumanist Party to try and orient people towards these conversations about the prospects of life extension, how they can be talking about not just talking about these things in the abstract, but talking about a public health service that would be able to do these things, and even just talking about what the next step is things coming down the pipeline, and what that means to you and your loved ones. These are conversations that we should always be having, and I think it should be the mandate of this organization above other things. All of these things are important, and I think that superintelligence is a thing that I really enjoy talking about. But anything that we can do that keeps us focused on a better future for us it's always a good step.
Mr. Ozkural,
Gentlemen, I have to.
yeah,
I do have to go. Eray, wonderful to speak with you. It's an honor, and I don't think it can be overstated how much your kind of organization and your kind of research has contributed to the quickening pace of techno progress. So thank you for what you do, sir.
Oh, thank you. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Yes.
Thanks,
yes.
Ben.
All right. I'll talk to you soon. Thanks, guys.
See ya. So that's Ben.
Right.
Yeah. So what I was going to ask you. I was going to say we'll wrap it up soon, but that's fine. Now Ben's gone, we can continue. I was going to ask you, so there's a bunch of different governments and AI companies. Which one should be looking out for? Example, there's Google DeepMind, so Google is obviously a big player. Governments, who are we looking out for here? Like what? I mean, there must be European institutions and things we don't know of, or China is obviously a big one. You mentioned that before. Russia has AI development. Who are the players, whether internationally on a government stage or company-wise, that we should be keeping our eye on in this technological race?
Well, I think startups are doing interesting things nowadays, as well as the research community, of course. Lacan's Facebook AI research group has made a very significant advances, and they got the Turing Award for their work, the deep learning researchers, as you know. So that's they've really refined the theory so well that they're now offering their approach as a general computing technology called differentiable programming. So the sort of stochastic optimization methods they use in deep learning have been extended to classical computer science problems too. So it's not just AI, it's also a general computing technology that they've developed, and that's actually the cause for the basic success of deep learning technology, because that thing works so well on data parallel architectures like the GPU. So the basic ideas existed well before 2000, but the advent of the GPU computing technology enabled these extremely impressive results. Now we can process sensor data in ways that we never could. The old methods like good old-fashioned AI, the symbolic logical expressions and handcrafted heuristics algorithms are no match for machine learning, where it's so flexible, it can really cope with irregularities, with many scales of data, just like humans. So that basic capability, dealing with the extremely rich data of eyes, ears, the human modalities. So that's only been recently possible. And the same technology can be applied to cognitive tasks like planning, reasoning, etc. So we're actually really close to neural architectures that are equivalent to advanced mammals, maybe chimps, and then later maybe humans. So we're figuring that out. There are incredible advances happening. One of the projects I'm involved in, well, research ideas or programs I'm involved in, is the free energy principle, which actually combines a biological definition life with consciousness. So this is a new formulation that defines intelligence as a adaptive organism that just tries to survive, and this is completely unsupervised behavior, and this seems to explain the human brain in the best way. As you know, we usually train algorithms by showing them what they're supposed to do. The new advances include unsupervised learning, where we let the machine learn on its own. So that's a really unique human capability, right? Like you put a human in a new environment, and he will figure out things himself. So we're beginning to give machines this unsupervised, unconstrained, lifelike cognitive abilities, and that's very interesting. Of course, we're probing the very basics of intelligence nowadays. So what are we going to have in the next 5 years, if you'd ask me? We'll see a lot more business automation, labor automation, of course. And these are not going to be unrestrained systems. These are usually going to be systems that are very specialized, that do only what they're supposed to do. But who knows, like 10, 15 years from now, we might be speaking to an actual commander data that can carry out advanced tasks aboard a spaceship. Who knows? Maybe we're getting there. Things are looking good nowadays. Yeah. So
cool. In the sci-fi movies, Cortana, not sci-fi, in Halo, Cortana is a sort of uploaded human consciousness sort of AI that has access to a universe of data and information within the human context, at least. Is that possible? Is that coming? Is that something within the realm of reality 100 years from now?
Well, it is something people are working on, but it's not going to happen so fast. I think they've found out it's not so easy. There's a human brain project of European Union. It was supposed to finish by 2025, but there might be some roadblocks. The basic idea is sound, though. They are going to make this physiologically accurate, like physically accurate model of the human brain. So they go very low level, so they can't fail, right? That's the idea. So if you simulate every relevant physical process, you're going to get the real thing. And they know the brain is actually very detailed at the lowest levels, so that would enable a simulation without knowing each and every part of the brain does, right? So you just scan the brain, and then that's an upload. They I think freeze the brain and then slice it, and then use electron microscope to scan it at a very high resolution. But you need to go very, very high resolution to picture the synapses, of course. You have to get to nanometer resolutions. That's a crazy amount of work. Although they've improved that process, it hasn't been fully achieved, but they're doing similar things like high-res scans for smaller animals. But to get to the human brain, it might take longer than 2025, and the computing power needed might be very large too. It might not be very feasible, even if the project succeeded. There is Eugen Izhikevich, who was one of the pioneers of whole brain simulation studies, and they had this company called like BrainCorp. So there's at least one company that's trying to do something like that, and so he comes from brain simulation background. And then of course there's also Jeff Hawkins's work, and he's also trying to model the human mind using a new mathematical model of the neocortex. He has a model that explains why a neuron can have 10,000 synapses. It makes so many connections, and the neurons in our brain, some of them have many connections like that, and the current architectures didn't account for that, but he has a model that does it. And there are also many interesting companies like Sentient Technologies that's building a scalable machine learning platform, and they recruited one of the pioneers of evolutionary neural networks programming. So as a genetic programming stuff on neural networks. So a lot of competition is brewing, of course, and Google DeepMind has made incredible advances in intelligent agent technologies. So intelligent agent is a thing that can do things like self-driving or piloting transport drones, but also things like say giving financial advice, looking at your bank accounts and that sort of thing. So the intelligent agent is different from typical AI systems like face recognition systems. It keeps interacting with the environment and gives decisions. It follows a goal or tries to optimize something in the environment, and so that's like the autonomy part of intelligence. It does things on its own. You just program it once, and then it does its job. So I think we'll actually start seeing some concrete applications of intelligent agent technology. So maybe we'll be able to program a robot by talking to him, and then it will be able to do some basic problem solving in its robotic brain and do things accordingly. So that's the kind of interaction level you need for personal robotics, home robotics. It's you have to be able to program it by speech and by showing things. So that's a lot of intelligence. And DeepMind's shown that they can incorporate insights from neuroscience research into these models, and that worked out quite well. And both Facebook and Google DeepMind are doing a fantastical job in producing advanced deep learning applications, and particularly concerning intelligent agent architectures. And Facebook has also done fundamental work in basic AGI models and methods too. So actually, they're not constraining themselves to the typical problem domains of their respective corporates, but they're actually tackling the general intelligence problem as well nowadays.
That's really interesting. So it sounds like there's a coalition of early movers on reverse brain engineering, the first steps towards reverse brain engineering. Talking about robots, Sophia. What do you think of Sophia?
Oh, well, Singularity.net, that's Ben Görsel's and Open Cloud Community's a cryptocurrency project. And Sophia is the brainchild of Hanson Robotics. It's such a compelling design, right? So it's based on two beautiful human women. So I suppose it's expected. But the the friendliness, the human-like gestures, it turns out it's actually very important. And Sophia's hardware is great in that respect, because it doesn't give you that uncanny valley repulsion. It's you feel comfortable near her, and so that's I think a great platform, because you can really see how that's going to be used in interactive services at corporates, even bartenders, some service personnel. It could work quite effectively, and if you think it can answer queries in any language. So we'll actually have a lot of upper torso models around us in the luxurious districts. I suppose, I suppose they're about to show up in San Francisco soon. So so that's interesting. Sophia is using something based on, I think, OpenCog as backend, and Singularity.net has an AI marketplace and some decentralized computing solution, as well as things like reputation scores and so forth for promoting open source contributions to the Singularity.net ecosystem. I think it's in general a good idea. My startup, Celestial Intellect Cybernetics, has also designed something similar. I've designed my own cryptocurrency, and they have their AGI token, so that's the utility token. I don't know if utility tokens are just going to succeed, but everyone knows it's something that can work, right? So it's probably going to take a lot of work to make it really useful, the utility tokens useful. But once we get there, it's actually a great way to lift a lot of people out of poverty, because it's a decentralized business model. So you can be an entrepreneur, right? Open up your own data center and start earning coins from your operation. It's an excellent idea. It's an ideal end goal of sharing economy. So I think it's a great effort. I don't know where it's headed next. They're incorporating more advanced algorithms into the new OpenCog architecture, and they've also done some interesting platform additions. So it's something definitely to watch out for. And I think in general, cryptocurrency space is going to become a lot more interesting. It's not going to be just Bitcoin. They're actually powerful contenders, so something interesting might happen there anyway.
Yeah, well, that's something to really watch. So you mentioned labor displacement. So a two-part question. Part one, you think that there will be labor displacement because of AI, and part two, can AI assist in actually growing the job pie if it's able to come up with resolutions?
Yeah, well, not simple questions. Nobody really knows how that's going to play out.
For example, in America, they're talking about the truckies all losing their job, right? Because their trucks are all going to be automated. So that's a displacement, right?
Yeah. Yes. So first, easier, less intellectually demanding tasks like driving. Though driving is still quite sophisticated. There are so many odd cases that you have to handle, and if you don't handle them, somebody might die. So it's super risky, and even that is not going to happen so fast. That's what I was trying to say. Like perfecting labor automation is a very knowledge intensive, time intensive, capital intensive process. Is the current generation of self-driving cars won't be able to replace human drivers like in 2 to 3 years. But after that, yeah, things are going to change, and a lot of drivers will find themselves at risk of displacement. And so this is going to happen gradually, but surely. Eventually, we'll get to the point where paying a human is much more costly than running an AI that runs on a cell phone and is equivalent brain power, right? So that's going to be tough for everyone. But so of course we need a solution, and we could try to postpone the inevitable, right? But that's sort of conservative reaction. to an emerging technology, especially in under current circumstances, isn't something we can afford. Instead, we have to make the transition as smooth as possible. And for that, I agree with proposals like universal basic income, of course. Now, a lot of people won't have time to retrain for another job, although AI may add to the workforce. How? It's going to enable new forms of entrepreneurship. As I just said, you can run your own data center. Everybody will need a data center because you have to run your AI somewhere, and you'll need a lot of hardware. So that's one of the new businesses that's going to be so important because everything's going digital, but there's going to be a lot of contenders. There are hundreds of countries in the world. Everybody's going to want to do this. So it's like a massive paradigm shift in technology, right? It's an industrial revolution. Everything, every device is going to change. AI is going to get into everything. Every internet or computer connected thing can benefit from AI, and so that's like building new trillion-dollar markets. Of course, people are going to get a cut out of it, but if the current economic system, let's say neoliberalism or whatever the hell this is, if you let this continue, it's likely that the mega corporations will take most of the pie in those emerging new markets too. So there's not going to be a lot to take for the ordinary guy. So that's that's still a problem. So that's why you need UBI, because you have to give people some basic means to support themselves. Otherwise, they could be left out of the race permanently, and that could, of course, cause a lot of social strife.
Yeah, is there a way for is this a new gold? Like you just said, there's a bunch of megacorps that essentially dominate the market, the global market, and
yeah,
and their share prices are already quite high. So for both, like if there isn't a crash, which there probably will be in the coming years, but let's say that they still remain relatively high. It's hard to take a slice of that pie. So is it a new gold rush, or is the general population going to be locked out of the gold rush because of the inequality there?
Yeah, the people who can get many shares of those megacorps are they are in the green. They're going to do fine if you can buy stocks of companies like Google, Amazon, etc. You're in the clear. You're good, but you have to already be rich to do that, or emerging rich. So that still doesn't help too many people, does it? Not too many people have the means to buy a lot of stocks. So the presently it seems like the shareholders get most of the earnings. So that isn't likely to change soon. So we either have to play with this basic dynamics of the market by introducing something like universal basic income guarantee, or we have to do something else, say like encourage sharing economy, or not allow monopolization in those markets. But there's so much monopolization. How is anyone going to figure that out? I'm not so hopeful about it. But the only thing we can do is to fix the massive income inequality problem. We can't just hope for the market to correct itself, because obviously the big shareholders are influencing even policy and the news. Maybe you're independent, but you see it all around you. Like the mainstream news is publishing so many strange stories that you start developing some suspicions about their credibility. So We live in interesting times, truly. It's a lot of social challenges too. But the threats, I mean, if you could call it a threat,
That,
it's
that,
not really a threat.
that was
It's more like it should be a welcome change, really. In a sane society, less labor should be welcome, but without pushing a lot of people into destitution.
that was going to be my next question, and we'll wrap it up because I want to have you on again, and I want to talk to you more, and I want to prep a little bit more because
All right.
Ben's run off with my notes, but that's okay. So I was going to ask you: do you see the transition as a do you see the transition as a easy transition, as a sort of a transition that won't come without much conflict and social upheaval, or do you see it as a very disruptive time? What do you how do you see it happening over the next, I don't know, 5 years?
Yeah. Well, it's going to be a very challenging transition because we don't have the infrastructure for it, basically. So, okay, so this is the part nobody wants to hear, I suppose, but we definitely don't have the infrastructure for this. So this is a new industrial revolution, okay? So we don't have the robots, right? We don't have them. That's a big problem. We don't. The robots don't exist. Somebody has to produce them, right? Now even the chips, the various parts, the various AI technologies, the sort I'm developing, etc. They're only now emerging. We're only now making them, but this is going to take a lot of investment. All of this stuff is not going to be easy, or it's going to be very, very challenging. And I don't know if the present dynamics of the global marketplace is going to allow a smooth transition, especially, well, because of the excessive monopolization in the high-tech sector. Because a few players do want to dominate the space. It's going to be I can see it succeeding, or becoming very, very beneficial if there are many AI companies solving all sorts of problems and all working out. But if there's a lot of monopolization, like all these tech giants gobble up all these successful startups and continue with monopolization, it could actually end up pretty badly too, because then say like the AI giants will control the entire world economy. So that's I think a worse outcome than any other AI risk scenario, like complete monopolization and corporatization of global economy. Even with AI, that's not a good thing.
I hear a generational disconnect when it comes to the leadership of countries. So Donald Trump, for example, he doesn't really talk about AI. He doesn't talk about crypto. He doesn't talk about a lot of these things. Andrew Yang talks about a lot of these things, and the new rock stars of the world are the Elon Musks, and they're all of a younger generation. They're of a younger feel, and as you go down, the conversation is changing rapidly. Do you expect to see a swath of younger leaders coming in the next few years being elected in who understand some of these challenges, as opposed to what we've seen, which is older leaders who don't really understand some of these challenges?
Yeah, although the U.S. presidential candidate Andrew Yang didn't talk a lot of things, although he has a pretty decent program. Like he seemed like this one-issue candidate, but he did say something reasonable about AI automation and basic income guarantees. So he introduced that idea to mainstream politics in USA. So I think that's a big deal, and he's obviously a younger guy and scientifically literate. He knows what he's doing. What he's talking about. He understands the matter. So unlike Donald Trump and the older generation of Cold War and politicians and that old world it's gone for a few decades now. So it's probably wrong to think in terms of those old hostilities, like Russia versus USA, China versus USA, etc. It's really the kind of thinking that got the world into so much trouble in the first place. And people like Donald Trump might want to continue their trade wars and other unnecessary rivalries, when we really should be working together. All of the countries, we have so many challenges. As I said, global warming. Global warming can't be fixed unless all countries collaborate. It's very simple. It's not even a very difficult thing to do, but we'll just have to decide. As humanity, okay, so there is this fusion reactor in the center of our solar system, so we can make use of that. Let's build a lot of solar panels and solve this problem. It's not such a hard thing once we agree to it. Well, we can't. So I think we have a lot of human problems to solve, and some of this is probably due to intergenerational conflict or disconnect. As you said, unfortunately, people who are older than 50 years old, 60 years old, don't understand the emerging paradigms of our day, and we need solutions so urgent because upheaval is real.
One of the things that Andrew Yang said was during an interview with MSNBC or somebody, one of those news stations, was they said, "Why did you go straight for the president? Why did you jump? Why didn't you go for a gubernatorial district and then some sort of Senate seat and then go up to the president?" And he said, "Because I see emerging challenges that aren't being discussed, and I don't have time to climb the governmental ladder." So he did that, and he introduced these new debates. And I see that as going to be a trend, because I see not only this growth curve of technology, but I see personally a growth curve of problems and issues, and more people will be jumping into the race. Maybe not to become the president of country X or Y or Z, but to introduce new issues and new debates as sort of a broadcasting platform for ideas.
Yes, absolutely. And emerging technologies will invite more people to join, and that's actually the essence of the sharing economy shift in business models, right? So Airbnb. It works so beautifully. If you've ever been to a welcoming home in another city using Airbnb, you see it's a great improvement over hotels, right? So it's like so much personal, so much warmth in it. It's something else. So you can see these things evolving towards more public uses, like stuff that creates a commons again. And this might be the big shift. It's neither the Marxist theorists nor the capitalist ideologues predicted this. That we could actually craft this, technologically assisted system of sharing resources effectively, right? So this might be the basic mode of operation that challenges the mega corporation style.
I tell you, that's a really good point, because if you go deep into Marxist theory or capitalist theory, they both rely on central regimes out of the paradigms that these were born of. So the capitalists were always arguing about the government being too big and powerful, but they always said at the end of the day, you sort of need a government because you don't want anarchy. And the Marxists, everything's collectivist, and eventually the state dissolves into this sort of fully made, like this sort of luxury sharing economy, not built off what we're talking about. But a decentralized economy is it's neither of these things. It's more powerful than both of these, and it's built off correct pricing mechanisms, and that's
okay. Exactly. So it makes the pricing methods work. The pricing mechanisms start working because there are so many players in the market. It becomes an effective, efficient open market. So that's why, the free software, open software distinction in software, right? License, GPL versus BSD, etc. Licenses. Now, a lot of markets, if you think about it, are not open. You don't have access to it. It is simply too costly for individuals or small companies to even enter those markets. So they're actually entrenched monopolies in most of the cases. The most lucrative markets. They are closed for guys like you and I, right? So they're only open for the big boys to play in. Yeah.
The idea, like, because in Australia here we have software is a huge thing. If people don't understand, I mean, if they don't want to learn about it, that's fine. But like in Australia here, we have this guy. His name's Michael Cannon Brooks. He's the CEO of this company Atlassian, and it's a $40 billion company now, and it was only built like 2 years ago. I mean, it's a software sort of like an open source Khan Academy sort of thing. It's $40 billion. I mean, it's just rocketed up.
Amazing, right? Amazing, right? So that's how fast digital businesses can grow, and so it's a very different kind of thing, and that's what makes Silicon Valley thrive, because they built these digital businesses that could scale rapidly as a new thing, and the investors made such good use of it. Of course, I mean, you can argue that some of the valuations are not fair, etc. But you can see that people are believe in the future of these high-tech companies, these digital businesses, right? So they believe in it, and that's what makes value. And so we see that
it's because my point is, it's because they believe in the decentralized economy. They understand the efficiency of that. Otherwise, you wouldn't really go for software. You'd go for something else.
Yeah, so it's actually a great way of pooling a lot of resources from different people and building something magnificent with it. So that's what Facebook is like. Without the input of all those billions of unpaid content slaves, Facebook would be nothing, right? And now we're about to, as people, as users, we think, some of us think, we should have the power back. We should have the power to control and process our data back from the megacorps, and so we think that's the essence of decentralized digital businesses. Like the basic resources in the digital economy are no longer controlled by the megacorps, right? So they are controlled, owned by people. So that's actually a realization of people owning the means of production. At least for digital businesses, that's becoming more and more feasible. It's becoming feasible. People can do it. Even small business owners can do it. So they're going to get in with this and build their own digital businesses, which will scale and make them a lot of money. And of course, I mean, okay, so look at it this way. The labor market in US, I suppose, or Western US, I suppose, it's like $16 trillion annual market. It's a huge market, right? So it's where the most interesting things happen. Even automating a good chunk of it, say like you're gonna automate like 1/10 of it, and that's like $1 or $2 trillion. So even that is such a huge opportunity. Like people are going to jump on it and try to earn a piece of that huge pie, and it's going to create new businesses for sure too, because we're going to be able to process things in a much more efficiently. We're going to be able to build cheaper products. Think of things like farming and how much more efficient they can be if you did it with machines. And so we're going to use this to lower costs and increase productivity and efficiency many times over existing practices. So this is obviously going to grow the overall economy. It's not going to just shrink it. There's not going to be that kind of shrinkage, but it's actually the economy is going to grow, and okay, so let me tell you the interesting thing about this, right? So we're going from this, unipolar economy, say, dominated by the US dollar, to a new economy where we have more reliable store of value. Even Bitcoin proved to be more stable than the dollar in terms of, in terms of holding a long-term value. So interesting, but it's true. Like the most speculative and deceptive financial instrument ever, even that is probably a better store of value than fiat currency. So something is happening there about cryptocurrencies, and the other thing is the energy economy. The real basis of 20th century economy was oil, the oil industry. Like everything else depended on oil, electricity, transportation, everything, and all the factories they ran on electricity, right? So that's like our the basis of our industry. But previous generation, in this generation, we're transitioning to solar energy. So that's how the real economy is going to grow up, because we're going to be able to multiply our total energy budget rather easily, and so this will definitely give us a bigger economy.
Yeah, oops, sorry, go on.
Yeah, and if you somehow introduce workable cryptocurrency that's equivalent to an electricity unit like kilowatt hour, right? So if you measure value by kilowatt hour or energy, electrical energy, and we can measure everything by electrical energy, and that gives us a much more dependable economy. You can't just destroy value by buying and selling stocks. Then it will be a lot more dependable, and then we'll grow it using solar panels and then fusion technology, and then so automation will enable us to do things we haven't been able to do before. Well, including mega projects of various stripes, but like building a space station and so forth. These are not things we can't build a space station at the moment. It will be too costly. Say that can house 10,000 people. But with these new technologies, the energy technology, AI, nanotech, all of the singularity-related technologies, these projects will be enabled, and these will still make the economy grow. The economy won't just go into recession. So this isn't a hype moment, and there's a real gold rush, and the gold is real. That's why I think that's what I'm trying to tell you. It's actually happening. So it's not a flickering thing, or there isn't going to be a second AI winter probably. So it's not smooth sailing. Some disappointment may always happen. Maybe these problems that AI researchers have been showing aren't the hardest problems. They're easy problems, right? They don't involve exploring a jungle and surviving in it, things like that. An actual human can do. So it's not like we put them through many challenges. Even like humanoid robots have a lot of trouble getting up and walk somewhere and walk through the door without breaking it. And so there's a lot of progress to do, but I think we should look to the positive side of all this. This is these developments are going to make the economy grow and save us a lot of time, so much time that we can pour then into creative pursuits and of course bettering the society, because so far, I mean, I think in the entire time I was alive, we all turned into human robots, right? So we work so hard, like 10 hours. People are proud of the number of hours they put into work every day. It's crazy. So we really have no space left, no time left for improving the society. So maybe that's going to change a little, and we're going to have a bit of a time to breathe and think about ourselves, because it's not like we're going to survive this by running away to Mars. We'll have to fix things here and now, including all the nasty, primitive ideologies that are trying to draw the world closer to war. I mean, that's a looming problem, right? Some of our people want war. They can't have peace. Well, I suppose we'll have to keep the peace and walk with machines of loving grace, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. So, kind of to wrap up, like the technologies, the robots, the silicon chips, the computers, the all of it, it all consumes energy, and it consumes resources. Are you worried that the world is running out of precious resources that will enable this transition to even happen in a technological way? Recycling, people throw their mobile phone in thinking they've done a good job, but they harvest very little back from your mobile phone of the elements.
Yeah, that's true. That's a real, short-sighted planning by the corporations. They should have known this, that precious metals are limited, and or hard to excavate. Like you can't really scale it up, I think, unless you have some easy resource. And I know there's a big problem there. So that's right. Maybe we don't have the resources to do it at this level of technology. But again, the advances in biotech and nanotech are staggering. Like I don't know if anyone can keep up with it. It's just crazy. And what we're seeing there is they're trying to make progress towards completely organic, sustainable technology. So eventually, I think we can expect a carbon-based or a boron-based, or some harmless material, abundant material, and we're going to see computer technology built around these abundant materials. So and energy technology too. So the panels, batteries, and chips, and everything else will probably be a very organic and sustainable. But it's interesting. We should be devoting more resources to that if we have the long view, but we don't seem to. So that's still a shortcoming. Like I think not enough resources are allocated to that very important problem of sustainability. In fact, we know so little about it. We keep blaming the consumers as if they can fix this, right? Like, oh, well, it was your fault. Why have you been using all these plastic bags and containers? Explain this to us. You should change your ways. Well, of course, it doesn't happen like that. You need something at the governance level to address these problems. People need to agree. Something we are very, very bad at. I understand, but we have to improve on that, because otherwise we're not going to solve that challenge. Like the sustainability is almost non-existent in the standard technology base. So ecological sustainability is a prime problem.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point, that the consumers they get the blame, because I talk to a lot of free market people, and they always start with that argument that the consumers need to educate themselves on the products they buy. But the problem with that is, yes, that might have worked well when you had in front of you a bronze tool, a carrot, and another option, a third option, a piece of cloth. But we're talking about highly sophisticated products, and if you go to the supermarket, there's a diversity of products. How is the consumer ever supposed to stay educated on every single product that they buy across a wide range, an ever-growing range of materials, tools, technologies, food groups, ideas, philosophies, religions? That's too much to expect from just a single consumer, and they're gonna respond to one of two things: quality or price.
Yeah, so that's an oversimplification. obviously. And there are studies, by the way. I don't know if you've heard them, but you can probably Google and find them. I don't know if I'm using the right words, but the problem with most industries is that if you account for the cost to replenish the natural resources they destroyed, during production, they all become unprofitable. So that was a very enlightening discovery, because it turns out that we're just privatizing these invisible costs to the people.
Subsidizing.
Okay, right. So people subsidize those. Say dismantling a nuclear power facility, that's going to be paid off your taxes. You won't know how much you paid for it, but you will pay for it. So that kind of thing actually makes most capitalistic businesses infeasible. But since we don't account for all the resources we actually consume and destroy irreparably from the environment, we can tolerate these costs, and we can sustain this ever growth, right? But in fact, we have been doing something that's unsustainable for a very long time, the entirety of the Industrial Revolution, to say the least, and some even include the Agricultural Revolution. We've been consuming a lot of natural resources, and we've been a very clear indication of that is how the land erodes. It's the soil erodes. There's no farmable soil anymore, but it also is devoid of nutrients. It has less nutrients, and that's really bad for our food supply. It can become a real health problem if you eat enough food, but if you can't get enough nutrition from your food, right? So it's all connected. So we didn't have this, more holistic view of the world. We didn't look for it. We didn't take it into account, and now it's exploding in our face because all of those resources we polluted or destroyed aren't going to come back for free. So so we have to change pretty much everything.
Yeah, absolutely. So my final question is one relating. You're in Turkey, right?
Right, I am.
Right. So there's Brexit happening in the UK, and Turkey is now not going to join the EU. Are you positive on global integration with these two factors happening, or at least it's not going to happen in Europe? But we could still see something in North America, like the NAFTA. I don't think under Trump, but in the future they might reverse that course. What do you think of global integration in those contexts in your area?
I think and there are a lot of successful international collaborations, say like the European Union research and development funds, and there are many such treaties that are super nationalistic, right? So there are a lot of such economic and otherwise international treaties working out just fine. But global integration is not going to be smooth or quite possible with rising nationalism and micronationalism. It seems to be hope it doesn't go back to the times of pre-World War I sort of nationalism or pre-World War II, but it seems like this sort of dogmatic religious kind of nationalism is taking hold again, and a lot of far-right parties are rising in Europe. So this might even endanger the European Union. So I think I'm not so hopeful about that. because UN system apparently failed. It's Saudi Arabia is on the Human Rights Council. The world is a very strange place right now. So I'm not so hopeful, but I think because of these very things you're referring to.
And what does that mean for AI? What does it mean for AI? Will they just do it in stealth? Will they just go underneath the national boundaries?
I think nations will be supporting their own AI research initiatives because they don't want to get left behind. So that doesn't hurt AI so badly. But you see between China and AI, like there's already some kind of hostility between research institutes, I think. So there's been some stuff like they're not. They're trying to distance Chinese researchers from American research venues, etc. Right? So those are not great things. Like traditionally in AI research, Chinese, Indian, European researchers, like they've all contributed so much to the field. It's a vast field. Okay, so I don't know, million papers. It's the kind of field where you can easily write a million papers, and that's going to require true international collaboration. So of course AI is going to get hurt a little, but now people have seen the upside. So there's going to be even more national funds and private equity coming in. So I don't think that's going to be a real problem, and I think the AI people themselves don't have this super nationalistic protectionist attitude that they usually get along fairly well, despite national differences. But yeah, you're right. Like Brexit shows that nationalism is making a nasty comeback, and that's going to hurt international collaboration. And in the short period, like UN is losing its credibility, and I don't see any other organization facing up to the challenge of replacing UN. I don't think that's going to happen unless some crisis requires it. Right, and that's really crazy. I don't want to get into Alex Jones territory here. Okay, so don't think of me as a conspiracy theorist AI guy, but crazily, Bill Gates has been talking about, hey, we need a world government now because of global warming, right? So maybe they're going to actually try to increase the level of international collaboration. To solve that challenge, because I think they now understood, the politicians understand that they've been manipulated by the money people.
Interesting. All right, Mr. Ozkural, thank you so much for coming on Detonation. I know it's very late over there, and I hope you get some sleep.
No problem.
And
I enjoyed it. Thank you.
You've entertained me endlessly now, and that's sort of good. And thanks for candidate Ben Zion, Futurist New Deal, for coming on earlier in the show. That was really good. He's got some interesting stuff. So thank you for that. Thank you very much for coming on Detonation.
You're welcome, and hope to see you again.
Yeah, absolutely. You're invited back almost any time you want, because you've fascinating insights, and the AI world is moving so fast that every time we meet again in the future, it's just going to be new stuff, just new info.
Yeah,
especially with Neuralace.
So
I did want to talk to you about Neuralace, but we'll leave that for next time. Basically, humans is Elon Musk right in his hypothesis that we need to integrate humans to control the AI? I wanted to ask you that. We'll leave that as a as a sneak peek for next time. So, thank you very much.
All right. We'll talk about that next time.
All right. Thank you so much.